in here, sharing that, and away we go. All right, so welcome. Thank you guys for showing up. This I Learned session today is actually on organizational strategies for students. And what this is basically a map or a blueprint for is how to get everything, your body, mind, and soul all into a good organizational structure for now so that you can eventually take it and use it in your professional life and your outside life, right? Like this isn't just like, getting your files and documents in order. This is like getting your life in order, right? Because I think people fail to realize how difficult the transition is from undergraduate to graduate school. And so it's super important that we find better ways to organize ourselves to help buy back some of our time and our sanity, right? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. F. Scott Feil, taught in the DPT program for 4 years or so before transitioning into this new position as Senior Learning and Development Specialist for iLife and iLearn. And we're going to talk today a little bit about some things that I think will be pretty helpful, uh, even if you've used some of them before, but especially as you start layering them in and adding all of them and really becoming optimized at this stuff. So we have three objectives, right? The first one will be to identify organizational strategies. The second one is following this session, students will be able to implement at least one organizational strategy, right, to improve your academic habits. And then the third one is following this session, students will be able to define life work flow and what that looks like for their own personal life. That's going to be a little bit different take on work life balance, as you may have heard it. So I'm excited to get you to that point. So, that being said, let's just start out with a couple definitions to get everybody on the same page, real quick. Organizational strategies simply refer to the planned methods and techniques that graduate students use to effectively manage their time, resources, and tasks across multiple responsibilities such as research or coursework or long term projects. And when I say research, I don't mean actual research, but it could be research, right? Like a capstone project or something like that. But I mean all the research and things you have to do to be successful as a student, right? You've got to look up extra articles. You may have to look up other resources, right? You may have to do a little more research on things that you didn't quite understand. So that's kind of the overarching theme of research there, right? So overall, these strategies involve prioritization, task delegation, goal setting, time management, and use of tools or systems to ensure efficient progress and balance across various academic commitments and life commitments, right? Because we're going to have a lot of those as well. The goal is to optimize productivity, minimize stress, and enhance the overall quality of work while maintaining a healthy academic and personal life. Because we don't want to be all work, no play, right? You go insane doing that. What is life work flow? I wanted to define this because, like I said, most people use the term work life balance. And I feel like that's a kind of a misnomer because there's never balance in work and life. And you'll find that, I'm sure, as a student, but definitely once you get into your professional career, right? So, that being said, what is life work flow? Well, it's a new concept that kind of prioritizes life as the foundation, right? We put our lives first, our health, our sanity, right? Our family first. And then we fill in around that with work and other responsibilities, being a student, right? That's kind of your full time job at times, right? If not all the time. And just kind of get naturally integrated around the life that we want to live to kind of keep ourselves healthy and progressing in a good way. Unlike traditional work life balance, which assumes a constant equilibrium between personal life and professional obligations, which, again, like we said, just isn't a real thing, it's never in balance. The life work flow acknowledges that achieving perfect balance is kind of unrealistic and it's more of an ebb and a flow, right? You're going to have times where you need to focus more in on school, and then there's other times where you can kick back, relax, and focus a little bit more on your personal life and your focus and where your energy goes, right? And where your priorities go. And that's just like in real life when you get out in the clinical world, things kind of ebb and flow, right? You start to see there's times where you need to spend more time in the home front, and then there's more times where you can focus in on projects and work. So, that being said, this approach allows individuals to flexibly adapt to changing circumstances where personal well being and life goals take precedence and work and other commitments must adjust accordingly, right? So you have to have these ideas that there are times of ebb and flow. It's seasonal, right? There'll be times where you're like, oh, this is a hard course. I really got to focus in. And then there's other times where you're like, all right, this is a little bit easier. I can take the gas off the pedal a little. I know my stuff. I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about it as much. Whoops, lost my mouse there. Sorry. I definitely don't need a new note. Not sure why that came up. All right. So that being said, what is the importance of organization? Why is it so important? Well, I like to think very business minded, right? I own my own business. I've done it for years, and any good or successful business has to have systems and standard operating procedures, right? Once you get those in place, the business can run successfully and it can grow, right? Well, what if you ran your life like a business, right? What if you kind of took your life and started to implement systems and standard operating procedures or habits, right? As you start to look at these things and really grasp your life and how you can make it better, right? Well, the first benefit, it helps reduce stress and anxiety, right? When you know where you need to be and what you need to be doing and you're able to keep on top of that, that reduces the worry and the anticipation and the unknown, right? You reduce that stress and anxiety. The second benefit is it increases productivity and efficiency. Obviously, businesses love to see that, right? Wouldn't you like to see that in your own life, right? You want to see that increased productivity. You want to see the efficiency. Like, man, I'm really on top of things. I'm getting things done. I'm ahead of schedule, right? Everything's looking good. Third benefit is it allows for better time management. And I just did an entire iLearn session on time management and really did a deep dive. We're going to touch on it a little today, but if you're interested in bettering your time management, go back and watch the replay of that iLearn session on time management. It was a good one. Last but not least, another benefit, it supports long term academic and professional goals. And like I said, that's what this is really all about. If you start putting these habits in place now, if you start getting into these routines of how to stay effective and how to stay on top of your schedule and your life, it's going to benefit you tenfold by the time you get out and graduate into the real world because grad school is hard, there's no doubt. However, real life's not that much easier, I promise. Been there, done that. It's tough, right? So the more you can do these things, and I still do a lot of these things to this day, and I'll talk about those as I go. But it's super important to grasp control of your life as opposed to just letting the chaos of the world affect you and feel like you have no control over it, right? So if you control the things we can control, get ahead of them, you're going to be much better off. So how do we do this, right? Well, I like to look at a Stephen Covey quote because, again, I'm very business minded. But to begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. It means to know where you're going so that you better understand where you're at now, so that the steps you take are always in the right direction. You can go a million miles an hour and go after something, but if it's in the wrong direction, you're now a million miles away in the wrong direction, right? It doesn't help us any. So we've got to think about the end in mind, right? And I'm going to challenge you a little bit to think about a little bit bigger end or a little bit longer end, right? If you're a physical therapist and you want to, focus in on being the best sports physical therapist you can possibly be, well, great. Now we're looking at graduating and then probably a 3 to 5 year window after that. So you're looking at maybe, 8 to 10 year goals, right? Long-term goals and visions. If your goal is just to graduate as an occupational therapist, great. That's a good goal. That'll take you a couple years, 2 or 3 years. Those are your goals. That's what you're working on. But I'm going to push you to try to think a little bit longer than that. Try to think a little bit further ahead in like 5 to 10 year windows and blocks, right? Because even if it changes, if life shifts or whatever, I was going to be an outpatient ortho bro for life, right? I was going to be the New York Mets new physical therapist and do that for the rest of my life. Well, then I got working with geriatrics, and all of a sudden I found I really liked those patients. So I was like, okay, well, maybe this isn't what I'm going to do, right? And I pivoted, and it turned out I love that. So it can change, but if you start with some big goals, some big needle movers, some big ideas and visions of where you want to go, that's going to help us work backwards to figure out how to get there, right? And it all starts with goals, right? You got short-term goals, like I said, a week to maybe a month. Long-term goals, maybe 1, 3, or like I said, 5 plus years if you really want to push yourself and you're starting to get an idea of where you want to focus. Now, SMART goals, here's a little secret. Your professors use these too. And I will tell you that's a fact because I use them, right? I use SMART goals for my life. I use them for my job. I use them for almost everything I do. The reason they're proven, they work, they're simple, right? We use them for our patients when we're documenting, we write SMART goals. Well, guess what? We can apply those same techniques to our goals in life. They have to be specific, they have to be measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. If your SMART goal has all five of those things, you're good to go and you can start plotting out how to accomplish those goals. Next up, we have to look at creating an effective schedule. Again, like I said, I did a whole I Learned session on this, but the big ones for me are really time blocking, which is kind of pictured up top here. You can see all nice color coded and when and where, and I'll get into a detailed picture of this in a minute. And that's where you allocate specific time slots for your research or your homework or your coursework or personal activities or whatever. Every hour of the day is given a name, and that's the thing you work on for that hour as needed, right? Or time block as needed. I have ADHD, and so I can tell you that I've only been diagnosed in 2 years, so I didn't know I had ADHD, but I've been using time blocking for the last decade or so because if it wasn't on my calendar, it didn't happen. I would just lose track of things. I would miss meetings. I would miss deadlines. And I was like, this isn't working. I got to find a way to make sure everything is in order and in line and I can see the big picture. And the best way I've found to do that is time blocking. The other thing I like to use, and we talked about this in that last session, is the Pomodoro technique. And that's where you work for 25-minute intervals, then you take a 5 minute break. Then 25-minute interval, then take a 5 minute break. So in an hour, you'll have two 25-minute intervals or 50 minutes total of work time and two 5 minute breaks or 10 minutes of rest time. I find that's effective, especially for adult learners, because it's really hard to sit in a chair and just study for 4 hours straight, right? It's just hard. Now, to some extent, we need to work on that a little bit because when eventually we take a board exam, we're going to be sitting in a room for several hours. But they do usually schedule some breaks in there, so that's useful. Use them, right? But when we're working at home, you don't want to sit behind a computer screen or in a book for 3, 4 hours at a time. You're going to need to take breaks. So make sure that you're working, you're focusing, and then you take a little 5 minute break, right? For yourself, get up, walk around, get the blood pumping, get the brain moving a little. The other thing that's important, and we'll talk about this in a minute too, is a weekly review. Every Sunday, review your schedule and then make adjustments as needed. I'll talk about that in the next slide. Some of the tools for using this stuff are just simple. Google Calendar or Outlook Calendar, whichever one you prefer. But use it and use it pretty religiously and just stick to it and keep everything on the calendar. Trello, I like Trello for task management and tracking of things. If you guys have ever heard of a Gantt chart, that's used for research a lot, but it kind of is a flow chart of when things are due, who's responsible for them, what your tasks are, and when they have to be done by, right? Trello is a pretty good tool for that. It's an app. You can use it on desktop or on your phone, but it's pretty solid for task management. And then Notion is a pretty good one for starting to integrate notes with to-do lists. I'm a big list guy. I like writing lists and crossing them off. And Notion was pretty good for that. And for long-term planning. Again, if you have goals, you have long-term goals, we need to be able to plan for long-term as well. So here is my schedule. This is my time blocking, right? And I will say that this was important to me to have color because I need to see what I'm working on and when. And you can see every hour of the day is given a specific name and what I need to work on for that hour. Now, that being said, there's sometimes where you finish a block a little early. Great. You can move on to the next one or try to get something done. I try to write three big needle movers every morning of things I have to get done that day. And for that, whenever there's free time, I hop on the first needle mover and start working on it. And then I put it aside till my next time block until I actually have to work on that needle mover. And then by that time, hopefully I'm a little bit ahead, right? But you can see here, the yellow is basically, meals, sleep, right? The purple is my outdoors and family time, right? My morning routine here. The blue is kind of like thinking or metacognition stuff where I'm trying to figure out and think about which needle movers I need to figure out what I have to do for my day to accomplish the goals I've set out. Green is just kind of admin and work time. Red is anytime I had meetings. orange when I was teaching classes. The orange were my class times and my lab time. And then the dark red are deep work or projects that need me to just focus in and sit there and knock it out and get it done. I usually, shut off all distractions, close the door, put a sign up, do not disturb. I'm doing deep work right now. But again, I have a Excel spreadsheet version of this. If you'd like it, I'll put my email address at the end of the presentation there. You can shoot me an email. I'd be glad to send you over the Excel spreadsheet, but it'll be attached to this replay as well. Now, this is the one thing we talked about that's super important. I actually fill out my Saturdays and Sundays too, but it's usually just filled up with like kids' schedules and where I need to taxi them around for the day, baseball games, volleyball games, golf practice, tennis practice, Cub Scouts, birthday parties, whatever. This fills up pretty good, but I didn't feel the need to bore you guys with that stuff. But this right here happens every Sunday for me. I have read, think, and plan here, but really it should really say plan, plan, plan. Even though I'm reading and thinking some things about what I'm planning, this is where I sit down and I do my planning for the whole week. I get my next week's calendar up. I fill in all the meetings that I've see that are planned already, and then I go back and backfill things where I have to get things done, right? That Sunday, if you can prep on that Sunday, that'll make the whole week go easier. Now, realize your schedule may change, things may fall off, things may get added on. But if you're not filling each hour with a name and a purpose, people will fill that for you, or you'll fill it with distractions, right? And it's okay to have distractions occasionally, right? It's all right to Netflix and Facebook and Instagram and all the things, but then you've got to kind of schedule it in there, right? Because if you say yes to doing something like that, then you're saying no to doing something that's maybe productive, right? So you got to keep that in mind. Some people need that to just zone out and veg out. That's great. That's fine, right? But there are more productive things that can be done. So make sure that you're not falling behind or anything like that. The other thing I will say, being ADHD, putting in this buffer hour at the end of the day for things I missed or dropped the ball on, or a call came up and I had to take it and readjust, that buffer is the only way I've been able to really see myself getting everything done and really keep ahead of my schedule. Do I still not get things done by the end of the day? Sure, sometimes, but then they become the needle mover for the next day. So, how do we prioritize these tasks? All right, we've got our schedule out, we know how we're going to fill it out. How do we pick the important things and the things that have to get done versus the things that should not get done or even touched, right? We talked about this too in the planning, the time management a little bit, but it's the Eisenhower matrix, right? And you've got four quadrants. You've got not important in the bottom left, and you've got important in the top left. You've got urgent in the top right, and not urgent in the, or I'm sorry, top left, and then not urgent in the top right. So if you look at the quadrant here, something that is not important, but it's urgent, you may have to delegate that or figure out another way to get it done, right? Who can do this for you, right? How can that get done without me having to do it? Because it has to get done right now, but it's not that important, right? It doesn't affect me directly. Somebody else has probably got to take this job, right? If it's important and urgent, then that's the thing you do right away. That's what you got to do right now, right? Immediate task, due tomorrow, right? If it's not urgent, but it's important, that's a long-term thing, right? Like, writing a thesis or a capstone project, right? Like, I have to do it, but it's not urgent, right? Like an end of the semester project and it's only the first week of the semester. That's important, but it's not urgent, right? So decide a time to schedule that out. Then, last but not least, if it's not important and it's not urgent, that's a distraction. That's social media. That's, Netflix and stuff. That's stuff that you just need to delete. You need to just get it off your schedule. Just, put it aside. Again, unless you're using it for like escapism or something like that, that's fine, but it still has to be limited in time so it doesn't doom scroll for hours, right? So now we've got how we're going to prioritize and pick our tasks and what's important to fill into our schedule. How do we start organizing all of our stuff, right? Our notes, our journal articles that we've downloaded, research that we're reading, things we're trying to keep on for best practices. How do we organize all this stuff, right? Zotero I found to be a very good tool for citations, right? I actually, when I did my dissertation, I was using Evernote, and then I found Zotero to be very much more specific and better for journal articles and PDFs and things. So you can, any journal article you download, a research study you download, you can actually put into folders, categorize nicely. You can put it into what class it is, what topic it's about if you want, and then you can share those out pretty easily. And so I like Zotero. There's a free version of it, so check that out if you haven't. And then for note taking, I actually do like Evernote. I used OneNote for a little while, but I don't use it much more. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay, so Evernote I found to be really good for note taking and organizing your research or projects or assignments. I like it because again, it's searchable, so you can just kind of look up key terms and phrases. It puts all your notes in a pretty good, effective, and organized manner. Now, if you don't use these and you have another tool you use, great. But you've got to figure out a way to organize your notes because A, you should be taking notes, right? But B, they have to work for you and you have to have a system that works for you. So hopefully you've got that down. If not, like I said, check out Evernote. I think that's a good one. They both have free versions. Now we are going to talk a little bit about file and version organization, right? File management, I found out, and this was my laptop had just files and folders all over the entire home screen. And IT came and told me, I told them, hey, my computer's running slow. I'm not sure what's going on. Can you help take a look? They came and looked and said, well, first off, you got too much stuff on your desktop. You should really have it all just down into like one or two folders and then open those and have subfolders and then subfolders. So it becomes like a journey, right? Your file management has to be kept in a structured manner or it's just going to kill time by trying to look for things and search for things, right? Luckily, like we've got the search bar and that helps a little bit, but it's nice to know where you're keeping all of your files and how you can easily access them for when you need them, real quick. So, it could look something like this, right? If we start out and the desktop is blank, you have two folders. You have a school folder and then you have a temporary projects folder. This is anything you're working on right now at this moment, but it's just not complete yet and it's not ready to go into its final home folder, which will be further down this line here, right? So if you open the school folder, you can have something like classes, then personal, and then job and life, right? The classes folder, you could have each of your classes labeled, right? And then maybe another folder for, projects or something, where you're working on stuff or things you've worked on, but doesn't need to necessarily go in a specific area, right? Once you open your classes, then you could have, each specific class with all the assignments that you have worked on, saved in one area. Any journal articles you've downloaded, right? Keep them all organized, topic by topic, chapter by chapter, unit by unit, throughout the syllabus, week by week, whatever you want to do, right? It's up to you how you organize it. Personal folder could have something like all your media and pictures and videos, and then maybe like where you keep your bills and like paperwork and important documents or files for you personally, right? And then if you're working a job too, or you just have some life duties that you have to take care of, you can open, the job life one, and then you've got maybe your schedule for every week of when you work, and then maybe, work documents like tax documents or, a project you had to work on or a presentation you had to put on for the staff or whatever it may be, right? So that is how you should try to organize your folders. Keep the desktop very clean and neat, just one or two folders to start with, and then open that up, and everything should be subfolders after that, labeled very specifically, especially files, right? Saving a file as untitled or doc1, that doesn't help. You really have to give it that name, take the time, save it with the name, and then put it where it needs to go. If you're working on it or it's not complete or you're not sure, put it in the temporary projects for now, and then eventually help find its home. Version control is something that is going to be super helpful for you just in life in general. And I'll tell you why, because I was working on my capstone project for my transitional doctorate and I got the blue screen of death. And I freaked out because I didn't know how far along I was. I was pretty close to being done. I didn't know when and where I saved it. I didn't know, when I last saved it. And so you can use a lot of tools for version control, but like a Google Drive, Dropbox, right? These will help back up and track changes to your documents, especially if you're using like Microsoft Word or Microsoft Teams. You can keep comments on the document as you go, and it'll keep updating them and saving where you're at. And that being said, make sure that you're constantly saving, right? Save, save, save. And then put the autosave on as well, right? If that's an option, click that button, toggle that, and put the autosave on because you want your documents saving frequently so that you don't run into the blue screen of death like I did. Luckily, it worked out. My brother worked at Best Buy. They pulled the hard drive and I got everything back. But it was a scary couple days. Then once you're done, save it again, right? Save it to the cloud, save it on USB drives, right, or external hard drives, and then save it on your desktop. So you have multiple ways to get it at multiple times in multiple different versions, and you never have to worry about losing important documents. Collaboration and communication. This is a big one for, again, life in general, right? Effective communication strategies. You'll see I have this highlighted, regular check ins with professors, advisors, and student resources, right? That's things like the student success department, your advisor, right? You want to talk to them, but even if you're ahead of the game, even if you're doing well, it doesn't hurt to have a regular check in with professors. We have office hours, right? We have them for a reason because we're here to help, right? So even if you feel like you're really good on a topic or subject, doesn't hurt to go in, clarify, make sure you're good on it. You've got the understanding and you grasp it, and then maybe start to think about what could be coming down the line, right? Well, how is this going to apply in the future, right? Your advisor, you should be checking in with them every so often just to let them know, hey, I'm doing well, or hey, I'm really struggling, right? And that can, eventually strike up the conversation with student success and tutoring, right? That could be an option if you need, if you're struggling, right? Participate in groups of for studying or academic forums. This is a good one for, if you have a little cohort that you like to hang out with, a little group inside of your cohort that you like to study with, keep that up, right? Because we learn best from teaching it to others. So if you can teach it, you pretty much got it down, right? So if you have a different group of people with varied strengths that can teach each other things, you're going to grow, right? You're going to learn. But don't be afraid to like hop into like student special interest groups or APTA special interest groups, right? And just see what's going on, see what the current literature and research is. What can you learn from there, right? Any of your professional organizations, right? The AOPTA or AOPT is it for no A O yeah AOTA for OTs, and I'm not sure what the SLP one, but you check in with your state representatives, right? Look into like the Texas PT chapter or the Texas OT chapter or the Florida SLP chapter or wherever you're at, right? Look into those state organizations. Just see if you can get involved. See if you can learn from them, right? And then if you're a member of your professional organization, just seeing what kind of free resources they have in the areas that you want to specialize in or that you're interested in for students. And then collaborate with peers, right, on projects, on writing, or feedback circles. These are pretty important. You got to kind of put your ego aside a little bit when you're doing these, but it doesn't hurt to make sure that you're doing these together, right? That you're working with peers, you're working on writing, you're working on just giving and getting feedback from people. It's not like putting you down and telling you that you failed at this or whatever, but it's just one of those things where you can get better at it, right? By giving feedback and taking feedback. And then tips for collaborating. Use tools like Slack, Microsoft Teams, or chat groups, Telegram, whatever you use, WhatsApp. There's a million apps out there nowadays to keep in touch. Whatever works for you and your group, use that and communicate, right? You can keep it lighthearted, obviously, and then joke around, have fun, but keep it going. Keep the communication up. Don't drop off. Don't ghost people. Don't fall off into oblivion, right? Maintain that professionalism as you go, right? Then create shared documents and track feedback via Google Docs or Microsoft Teams or however you guys like to operate. Next up, managing life work flow. Again, this is not work life related balance because that's not a thing. We know that that's just not ideal or optimal. So what is life work flow, right? And how can we do that well? And we talked about the definition in the beginning because again, I wanted to reframe your mindset around life work flow as opposed to work life balance. But it's crucial because if it prevents burnout, if we do it well, right? It enhances our mental health and well-being, and it improves focus and productivity. If you can just get your mindset around the fact that it's never going to be balanced and it's never going to be perfect, you're just going to have this ebb and flow, the seasons where you have to lean in and lean out, right? If you do that, you won't get stressed and anxious over the fact that things aren't going right according to the 50-50 split, right? It's just about learning to kind of roll with the punches when they come, right? To go with it and just figure it out as it goes and realize and be self-aware enough to know when to lean in and when to lean out. So some of the strategies to accomplish this, right? Well, we've got to designate specific times for study and relaxation. Go back to that time blocking calendar, right? And put in the specific days and times of when you're going to do studying and how much you need. Be honest and truthful about it. And then how much you need for sleep, for rest, for, meals, for exercise, for meditation, whatever, right? And then self care. You've got to take regular breaks. That's why I like that Pomodoro method. It's 25 on, 5 off, 25 on, 5 off, right? Sometimes you just need to step away. You need a half day. You need a mental day. You need to take a day off and go play golf, whatever it may be, right? But you need to take breaks every so often. Got to prioritize sleep. Cramming, staying up late, not going to work. I found that out firsthand when I was working on my dissertation. I was working 40 hours a week. I had my own business, and then I was trying to do online school to finish this dissertation. And there would be nights where I would get 2 to 3 hours of sleep, then get up and go and do it all over again, right? Not cutting it. It's not good. We know we need 7.5, 8 hours of sleep. Do what you can to get as many of those as possible because you need to recover. That's when the body and brain recovers. Make sure you're prioritizing your sleep and then engage in hobbies and connection, right? Make sure you're getting out, talking with people, socializing, right? We're social beings. We're supposed to interact with people. And then finally, again, that hobby thing is big. You have to have something that you enjoy that's not just school, right? School or work, like that's not your identity. That's not who you are. What do you like to do when you're not doing school or, work or whatever it may be, right? Do more of that. Do more of what makes you happy. Some tools for this, again, if you're into meditation and quiet, right? Headspace and Calm, again, they've got free options on this. Those are good to try to start using if you haven't done it before. And then use one of the habit tracker apps, right, for maintaining a balanced routine. Again, like I'm not asking you guys to do all this stuff all at once, but just pick one thing and start, right? Start there, do it, make it become a habit. Once you see that you're doing it and you're gaining momentum, great. Now add another layer, then add another layer, right? Make sure that it's becoming daily routine and habit for you, and it will just get easier and easier and easier as you go. So, how do we stay motivated on this journey? It's not an easy one, right? Grad school's tough. It's a long journey, right? But you've got to celebrate milestones, right, along the way. You've got to reward yourself for reaching these small goals, right? Like successfully completing a practical exam. Go out and celebrate, right? And then get back to studying and get back on it, right? You ace a test or you had a really good week at work or whatever it may be, right? Celebrate those things but then realize that all right, now it's back to work, right? You can't lament in the high highs or the low lows for that reason, right? Like you've got to keep moving forward. You got to pat yourself on the back a little. Just don't let it go to your head, right? You're not done there. It's still a long journey. Visualize your success. I'm a huge fan of positive affirmations and visualization, right? So saying things out loud about yourself that you truly believe and that you want to become, and then visualizing, closing your eyes and keeping that big picture in mind, seeing the goal, right? Seeing graduation, seeing licensure, right? Getting a first job or starting your own business, whatever it may be. And it shouldn't be just about like the money, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to make all this money. It doesn't really work that way. And truthfully, that shouldn't even be one of the big motivators. You've got to keep in mind the fact that you're going to have impact. You're going to help a lot of people in the world. That should be enough to just get you up and going in the morning because you truly love to do it, right? And if you do it well and you help more people and you grow your impact, the money will be a byproduct, right? If that's one of the things, but it's an extrinsic motivator that, truthfully, you get to a certain point and it's like, all right, that didn't really help me much, right? And then last but not least, build a support network. Connect with other graduate students, join professional organizations, engage online with communities, peers, and this is a big one. Again, I highlighted it, mentors. Find a mentor, somebody in your field, in your profession, doing what you want to do in the topic of area and specialty that you want to specialize in. Follow those people, engage with them on social media, get to know them, read their books or their posts or their blogs or whatever. Get to know these people, find a mentor, and then reach out and ask at some point, hey, I'm really interested in this. You're really good at that. Would you mind mentoring me? Right? What's the worst they can say? No. Truthfully, most people in the healthcare and rehab professions are very giving, especially of their time, because they do want to push their profession forward. They do want to help other students and people grow and become the best versions of themselves. It's a way to give back to the profession. So seek out mentors. Mentors have got me so far in such a short period of time. So to summarize, again, effective organization strategies reduce stress, increase productivity, and support academic success. Tools like goal setting, frameworks, scheduling techniques, and notes and research management tools are essential. Maintaining a good life work flow specifically for you as an individual, because it's going to be very different for everybody, right? Somebody with four kids and two dogs and, going to school and working a job, their work life flow is going to look very different than a single independent driven person with no family or friends that they're interested in. They just want to work, work, work and work hard and do, all the things. It's going to look very different, and that's okay, right? It's what works for you, right? But it's crucial to have that mindset around it for this crucial long-term well-being and success. And then last but not least, stay motivated, network, 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 get out and meet people, interact with people, and find a mentor. So, any strategies in particular that you feel like you could implement on Monday morning? We would love to hear about those. And if you have any questions or if you'd like a copy of that time blocking document, we'll include it on the replay of this, but also, like I said, you can email me at feil@usa.edu. I would be glad to share it with you immediately. Whew, that was a lot, like drinking from a fire hose. Questions, comments, concerns, things you feel like you could implement on Monday?
I think I'm gonna. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
No, go ahead, Kelsey. I'll go after.
I think for me, I'm definitely going to implement the whole time blocking frame, especially since I do have three children and work. I think that'll help me really schedule and maintain a balance and routine.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a game changer for me because I was like a glorified cab driver most of the time. I'm just driving all over town, dropping them off, picking them up, dropping them off, picking them up. Oh, I have work. I got to do this. Oh, I have a meeting. Like if I didn't see that on my phone, on my calendar, I would have missed so much. I couldn't have done it. There's no way to stay organized without that. And that's just been
No,
me personally, but I love it.
no, and that's how I feel. I feel like even when I'm home, like a chicken with my head cut off. Oh, let's do this task and bounce here and all around, and it's too much.
Yeah. And realize it's still not going to be perfect. You're going to block it out and things are going to fall through. Calls are going to get, pop in. Emergencies are going to happen. That's fine. Like I said, adding that little buffer line in there somewhere, even if it's just 30 minutes, super helpful to catch up on things that you missed up or didn't finish.
All right, awesome, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and just shoot me an email. Like I said, I'd be glad to send you that Excel spreadsheet so you can start working on it. You just make a copy of it and fill it in for your day and what it looks like, your days. And like I said, I fill out the weekends too because I have to.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Sarah,
then
what do you got?
I just wanted to say I think I'm gonna try to do the Pomodoro technique that you talked about because you were saying like it's hard to study for like 4 hours straight, and I feel like I try to do that honestly like 5 days a week because I feel just so overwhelmed sometimes with like all my
Yeah.
OT classes.
Hmm.
Um, but I notice like when I try to just study 4 hours straight without like a break, I don't feel like I retain much, if that makes
No.
sense. So
Yeah,
yeah.
your brain can't process and remember. You're going to retain maybe 10, 15% of that. So like, yes, you can study for 4 hours straight. However, break it up into those little digestible bits. And in your break, when you get up and walk around or go to the bathroom or, grab a snack, whatever it is, think about what you just studied. Reflect a little bit on it. Like, see if you can get it to stick in that brain and retain more than you normally would, right? So, like, yeah, that's how I use my breaks. Like, I don't completely disconnect, but I get up, I walk around, I try to get out, get some fresh air maybe. And while I'm doing that, I'm reflecting on what it is I just worked on and what needs to, still be done. Or if I'm, studying something, then I look at, all right, well, what did that really mean? Like, I wonder how that's going to apply. That was interesting, or I didn't understand that. I got to go back and do that again or something. So,
Right,
yeah, it's a great technique just for breaking it up when you do have to study for long periods of time.
right. And I just had like a question because
Yeah.
you mentioned that you had like ADHD.
Hmm.
Like I actually like have a lot of like anxiety, and then I also have obsessive compulsive disorder. So
Hmm.
I was just wondering, I feel like sometimes it's hard for me to stay on track in terms of like the scheduling because I've heard of like Trello and like I use like Outlook or like Google Calendar, that kind of stuff. Like, what do you usually do when you have times where it's like you feel like your mental health is kind of getting or is like impacting your schedule, if that makes sense, like
Yeah.
negatively?
Yeah. I take a mental health day, right? I get out, I golf, I go fishing. Sometimes I'll just literally take a half day or a full day off, and I'll just go for a walk, get out in nature, like ground myself, like whatever I have to do. If I feel like I'm getting overwhelmed or I feel like it's getting to be too much, I'll schedule that in the calendar as quickly as I can, right? Like if I was, let's say, working a job, like my job's a little more flexible, but let's say I'm working a job where it's like you need 2 weeks notice to put in a PTO request or something, right? Well, then 2 weeks from now, I'm taking off on a Monday and I'm just checking out. I'm going to do my hobby. I'm going to go, whatever it is you love to do, go do that. In the meantime, to get to those 2 weeks, try to schedule in some time with friends or family just to connect with people and again disconnect a little bit from the overwhelm or the studying and stuff, and you know realize it's important. Keep it a priority, but it's not the priority, right? Your health and your
Right.
family and your wellness, that's like the priority. That's why I said like switching your mindset from like life work or from work life balance to life work flow is a good starting point, because you have to prioritize things correctly first. Right. It's like the oxygen mask example, right? You've got to put your oxygen mask on first before you help anyone else. Otherwise, you pass out. You're not useful to anybody, right? So if you have a kid, you got to put yours on first, then address the kid, right? And if you don't take care of yourself, if you're not practicing self-care, if you're not doing these things, you're not getting sleep, you're not, hydrating, you're not eating healthy, exercising, if you're not doing all those things, you're not going to be much of a student, let alone a clinician. You're going to be, suffering in a lot of areas. So, trying to optimize what works for you. And again, it's very personal, it's very individual. So you have to figure out what works for you. But just, being self-aware enough to know and feel it kind of coming on. It's like burnout, right? Like you can kind of start to sense like, oh, this isn't feeling right, or like, oh, I'm exhausted, or I'm just not motivated to do this anymore. Like you start to see some of those signs and symptoms. Try to get a, PTO day scheduled off, or a, self-care day or a mental health day. I like to call them, whatever you got to do to just, figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Any other questions? Anything else?
What was your email again?
I'll put it in the chat here. It's
Awesome. Okay.
ffeil at usa.edu. So FFEIL at usa.edu. There you go. It's in the chat.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, if you guys start implementing this stuff, it's not just for like surviving as a student. This is really like good life practices. Like it really has like I started doing a morning routine. I wake up an hour earlier so I can do that before the kids get up. Otherwise, I won't be able to get it done. And in that hour, I already feel so much more accomplished to just take on the day. Like I can, run through a brick wall. Like I've already done so much and it's only 6 a.m. This is great. Now I have to go to bed earlier, which kind of stinks because I'm more of a night owl, but I feel better, my brain works better, I'm cognitively more aware, and yeah, I get more things done when I implement these systems for my personal life and my work life. But you know, and you don't have to try to do all of them at once. Don't try to do a major overhaul, right? This isn't a full tear down and gut job kind of thing. You can just, put some paint on one of the walls, like you can pretty it up little by little, right? So just take one of these things, implement, make it habit. All right, I'm pretty good at it. Been doing it a few weeks now. It's constant. I'm consistent. Then layer on the next one you want to try. Then layer on the next one, and eventually you just get 8 to 10 of them, and it's like, man, I'm firing on all cylinders. I feel pretty optimized, And then also realize that there's sometimes where life's gonna kick you in the teeth, even though you're optimized, right? So that's okay. You got to give yourself grace to be able to ebb and flow in and out of those and realize it's just seasonal, right? It'll pass, and you'll get back to the top again. So keep that vision in mind, keep that big picture in mind, realize it's much, much bigger than just, getting that piece of paper and graduating and all that, right? You got a big, big world ahead of you, a lot of impact you got to make. You're going to change a lot of lives. So keep up the good work, keep focusing, keep on your journey, and start implementing some of this stuff and see how it works.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good
Thank
one.
you.